From Work Integrated Learning, Simon Fraser University, my name is Saran Juwani, and this is Co-op Stories. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably might be in the early stages of seeking and applying for your first co-op work term, or might be looking for strategies to find a new job. You might be nervous about what's to come, or be wondering about how the experience of landing your first co-op or job might look like. In today's podcast, I will try filling you in about exactly that. I interviewed 3 co-op students: Juliana Logan, a 5th-year IAT student, Sagar Rawal, a 3rd-year business student, and Ray Sharma, a 4th-year communications student, who share their experiences about overcoming obstacles and struggles that they faced while seeking for their first co-op work term. They also share some tips for our listeners, so you might be better prepared for what's to come next. I took these fellow students back to the time when they've just started to apply for co-op jobs, and it seemed like everyone was kind of on the same page.
So my first co-op work search was actually a few years ago. I think it was in 2nd year for me, and nothing came of it. Part of my problem was that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so when I was looking at all these positions, like UX designer and all these like crazy technical sounding jobs, I got super intimidated and I didn't apply for anything. So I ended up just not really getting anything out of that work search term because I didn't know what even the jobs were. So, realizing how narrow my field is and how few opportunities there are, and seeing like the rejections and not getting any of those opportunities, that was really discouraging at first because, there I was all ready and gung-ho, I want to work in this industry. And it seemed so impenetrable. So it was definitely quite discouraging for that semester, for sure.
In the beginning, I applied for 50 positions before I secured my first co-op work term. Just that I have noticed that there are certain employers who prefer Canadian citizens or permanent residents over the international students, even though the international students are more qualified or perfectly fit for that role. Sometimes they judge them as they think international students might not be able to adjust or survive in their work environment just because we were not born here. And it was actually a hard semester for me. I was doing courses at the same time and then working at a bank too, So it was a hard time, but I would say I've learned a lot.
To be completely honest, it wasn't easy at all. And that's not to say, because there's a lack of jobs or anything out there. I think it's just the lack of experience that was really hurting my chances and, was making the whole process harder for me. And then on top of that, going to my interviews, working on, creating all these updated cover letters, for each job and that kind of stuff. And, a lot of the times I would put in that effort and not hear back. And, at the end of the day, you do find that kind of disheartening. But, that is part of the experience, right? Like not every job interview that you get not every interview that you get will result in an offer. Not every, application that you put forward will result in an interview, that kind of thing. In terms of struggles, I did not hear back from a lot of employers actually. In total, I had about, I'd say 10 interviews throughout the whole seeking process. That's the span of about 2 to 3 months. I applied to 25 different jobs. The even harder part, honestly, that I found was that when you did hear back for a second interview, but then that was about it. So I would hear back that they were interested, they'd want to follow up. I even had a couple situations where I went into the organization, they'd given me a tour of the office. I was sure that I'm most likely going to get an offer, and then just to find out a few days later that there was another candidate who had more experience than me, who was more qualified. So that's one of the biggest struggles that I dealt with.
It's one thing to face struggles, and it's the other to overcome them. Everyone seemed to have a relatively challenging semester, Being a co-op student myself, I can very well relate to their experiences and understand what it's like to be in their position. There will be times you might feel demotivated and discouraged, but know that there are always ways to improve and overcome challenges that you might face.
I just kept myself calm and then just waited for the right opportunity. I didn't do any such meditation or something. I was just going with the flow. That's it. I just had one thing on my mind, that I have to get a co-op this semester. The best thing is I kept my options open. I just did not restrict myself to the accounting and finance team or maybe accounting and finance co-op. Like, I was even ready to take the marketing position, even the HR position. I had nothing going on in my mind. I was like, I just need to get an experience first. Doesn't matter which position.
One thing I've done recently is if I apply for a position that I have like I have any kind of point of contact, if I don't get it, I follow up and just say, hey, do you mind giving me just a tiny bit of feedback? Like, what were you looking for that I didn't have? And then you can take that information and do better the next time. Sometimes it's just you don't have the experience and, there's nothing you can do. But sometimes it's something like, oh, we wanted to see X on your portfolio. And then okay, I need to work on developing X to put in my portfolio. So just learning and trying to do better.
I think for me, it was kind of really like a personal motivation thing. I kind of kept reminding myself that, I came in co-op with the purpose to, seek a job, to get placement. And, no matter how hard it is, no matter how many rejections I'm facing, that's my goal. And I'm not going to stop until I do get there. So yeah, that's what really pushed me. It's funny because the job that I'm in right now, I almost did not go to the interview because I was like about, 9-10 interviews deep and I was like, there's no point. But then, at the last minute, I was just like, you know what, if I don't go, if I don't even try, I'm just, cheating myself. And, then, I ended up getting it and it's been great. So yeah.
At this point, you might be thinking, why go through the hassle of doing co-op in the first place? I asked these students whether they thought seeking for co-op was worth the experience.
I think it was, even though I didn't get anything, like I didn't get a position out of that first semester. What it did was prepare me to keep applying. It gave me the tools, like all the tools that Co-op teaches you about resume, cover letter, portfolio, that sort of thing. It gave me the tools to be able to apply to these positions. It gave me some motivation. It had this structure that sort of guides you through like applying and all these things. And it gave me practice, which honestly is something I think people don't realize, is that applying for jobs actually does take practice. Like, that means that failure and rejection is part of it, because rarely do you get the first job you apply for. You have to keep working on your materials and working on your presentation. And that's how you eventually get your dream job, right?
Actually, I believe the experience is worth the effort spent in looking for a job. It definitely adds a value, because when you work in a multinational company or a Canadian organization, a big firm, then you definitely end up learning something. It's not that it's not worth, it adds to your resume and you'll end up making new contacts. You'll establish relationships with the senior managers or the senior executives, making new friends. And the best thing is, it will definitely help you in landing your job after your graduation.
Here are some tips that you can use to maximize your efforts while applying for your first co-op.
So I think there are a couple. One thing I wish someone had said to me, or I wish that I believed from my first one, I think probably people did say it, but I was like, no, is be flexible, be open. Even if you have this very specific dream, consider other opportunities, because you never know what will lead to something great. Even if you don't see your dream position in the listings, just apply for whatever you feel you could do, right? Because you'll probably end up learning something from it, or making connections, or finding out that is what you want to do, right? So be flexible, be open, don't give up, talk to your friends, like I said, lean on each other, because chances are if you're feeling low about struggling to find a position, there are other people who are feeling the same or have felt the same. So rely on each other, you know?
I would tell them to honestly just to make the most of it and, you know, just give it your all. Everyone's experience I've found is very different. You know, I know some people who have gotten a job offer within their first 3 interviews. I know, you know, some people who it has taken them, you know, 15 plus interviews. So, you know, advice that I would give is that everyone's situation is different. Don't, you know, let yourself get down because, hey, like, you know, my friend got their job after, you know, their second or third interview. It's taken me like 6 or 7. That's totally okay. You know, apply to lots of postings, go to your interviews. And, you know, even if you don't get that job offer or that interview that you want, it's still a learning process at the end of the day. One thing that I'd like to say about, you know, the whole co-op experience is that I think that everyone, you know, if you can, and if you're willing to, you should try it, because experience nowadays is a huge part of, you know, moving forward, building your career, or even starting your career for that matter. The co-op department, it's a great resource for, you know, building your resumes, building upon your interview skills, you know, building upon your cover letter skills, like anything you could think of in terms of jobs. So it's just, you know, co-op in general is something that I would recommend to students.
With the right mindset and persistence, Sagar, Juliana, and Ray overcame some of the barriers that they faced while seeking for co-op. Co-op not only helped them gain skills, experiences, and clarity in their career, but also has better prepared them to embark on the journey that lays ahead. If you have made it this far in the podcast, I hope that you have learned something from these stories, and I wish you good luck in your own co-op seeking journeys.